A few days ago, something crazy happened right in front of my house. I was just going about my normal routine when the neighborhood's most annoying person, yeah, the infamous HOA Karen, showed up at my door. You know the type. Sunglasses too big for her face, arms crossed, attitude dialed up to 100. She strutted right up to my driveway like she owned the place. Now, before I get too deep into what happened, let me tell you this wasn't the first time she's caused problems. But this time she really outdid herself. She didn't just yell or complain. No. She actually called 911. On me. Because I didn't let her into my house. I mean, seriously? It was a regular Saturday. Sun was out. I had the garage open, just organizing a few tools. Music playing low in the background. I was in my zone. Out of nowhere, I hear footsteps on my driveway. I turn around and there she is, Karen, hands on her hips, looking like she's ready to issue a citation or something. My first thought? Here we go again. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask if I had a minute. Just started barking orders. I need to inspect your water heater, she said, like she was some kind of authority figure. I looked at her, confused. Excuse me? You heard me. I got reports of unauthorized modifications. I'm allowed to inspect. Now let me be clear, I hadn't touched a thing in my house that would even fall under the HOA's rules. And even if I did, there's a proper process. They're supposed to send a notice. They don't just barge in. But Karen? She makes her own rules. I told her no. Straight up. You're not coming inside my house. Her eyes got wide. She stepped closer. You don't understand. I have the right. No, I said again, standing my ground. You don't. That's when the drama really started. Her face turned red. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. I asked, "Are you really calling the cops?" She didn't even answer me. She just started talking. Loud enough for the whole street to hear. Yes, hello. I'm at / address. I need help. A man is refusing to comply and is acting hostile. I feel threatened. Hostile? Threatened? I was literally standing there with a wrench in one hand and a confused look on my face. Not yelling. Not moving. Not doing anything wrong. I'll admit I got nervous for a second. In situations like this, things can go south fast. But what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, is that my wife was working that shift at the 911 dispatch center. She picked up the call. And the moment she heard Karen's voice, she knew exactly what was going on. She didn't panic. She didn't jump to conclusions. She did what she always does. She listened carefully. Stayed calm. Took control of the call. Meanwhile, I just stood there watching Karen with her phone pressed to her ear, spinning this wild story. At that point, I wasn't sure if I should laugh or record her. But I stayed quiet. Because I knew something Karen didn't. And what happened next? Well, let's just say she made a big mistake calling 911 that day. We live in one of those neighborhoods where everything looks picture perfect. Lawns trimmed just right. Driveways spotless. Everyone waves, smiles, and keeps things polite on the surface. But underneath that polished look, there's tension. And most of it? It comes from the HOA. Now don't get me wrong, some rules make sense. No one wants broken down cars in yards or 10-foot weeds growing everywhere. I get that. But the people enforcing those rules? That's where it gets tricky. Some of them just love the power too much. And none more than Karen. She's one of the board members. Self-appointed neighborhood watchdog. The kind of person who walks around with a clipboard like she's on a mission from the president. It's honestly hard to tell if she even has an actual job. Because she's always outside looking for something to report. Trash cans left out too long. Grass growing half an inch over regulation. A car parked a little crooked? You'll hear about it. We moved here thinking it would be a peaceful place to raise a family. For the most part, it is. But Karen? She makes things stressful. We've gotten letters from her 3 times. Once because our Halloween decorations were too spooky. Another time because my son left his basketball out overnight. And then there was the time she accused us of having unapproved paint on our fence. It was the same color it had always been. She's not just annoying. She's exhausting. The worst part is she acts like the HOA is the government. Like she's the law. She talks down to people. Shows up uninvited. Pushes her way into conversations that don't involve her. It's like she's always looking for someone to scold. And for some reason she's fixated on our house. I've tried to be patient. My wife even baked her cookies once to keep the peace. Karen accepted them, and then told us our mailbox needed a new coat of paint. We couldn't win. Over time, most of the neighbors just started ignoring her. But Karen doesn't go away. She gets louder. More intense. I've seen her argue with people on the sidewalk. I've seen her measure grass with a ruler. Not kidding. She actually pulled out a ruler one day in front of the Johnson's house. So, when she walked up that Saturday and demanded to come inside my home, it didn't come out of nowhere. It was the latest in a long list of ridiculous behavior. But this time was different. This time she crossed a line. She wasn't just being a busybody. She was trying to enter my house without permission. That's when things stopped being annoying and started getting serious. And that's what led to her pulling out her phone and calling 911 like she was in danger. Like I had done something wrong. Karen has always acted like she owns the entire street. But the truth is she's just one member of the HOA board, and not even the president. Still, she walks around like she's the sheriff of the neighborhood. And everyone knows her by name. Not because they like her but because they can't avoid her. She's in her mid-50s, always dressed like she's headed to a town hall meeting, even if she's just walking her dog. Sunglasses that never come off. A stiff walk that screams, "I have authority." She doesn't knock, she presses the doorbell. She doesn't ask, she demands. It's almost like she enjoys the control. Or at least, the illusion of it. If your trash bins are out 5 minutes past pickup time, she knows. If you park your truck an inch too far from the curb, you'll hear about it. She even tried to tell a teenager down the street that his skateboard ramp was a safety hazard. It was made of plywood and used maybe twice a week. Her favorite line? According to HOA guidelines, she says it like it's the start of a court hearing. Like we're all supposed to freeze and listen. Most neighbors try not to argue. They just nod, smile, and fix whatever she complains about, just to avoid the headache. But I never bought into her routine. I know the actual rules. I read them when we moved in. I know what the HOA can do, and more importantly, what it can't do. And nowhere in the rulebook does it say Karen gets to enter someone's private home because she feels like something's wrong. And that's exactly what she tried to do that day. She didn't ask. She announced. She walked up to me in my own driveway, pointed to my garage, and said she needed to inspect possible modifications. I asked her, modifications to what? She said she got an anonymous report that I might have installed a water system without approval. First of all, we didn't install anything. Second, who makes an anonymous report about a water system? I told her there was nothing to inspect. She didn't care. She said, if you don't let me in, I'll have to escalate this. I just stared at her. Escalate to what? She didn't answer. Just crossed her arms and gave me that look, the one she gives when she thinks she's winning. But she wasn't. Not this time. I said, calmly but firmly, you're not coming inside my house. Not without permission. Not today. Not ever. That's when she took a step back, pulled out her phone, and started dialing. At first I thought she was bluffing. Just trying to scare me. But then I heard her say the words. Yes, I'd like to report a situation. I'm being threatened by a homeowner. He's refusing to cooperate. I feel unsafe. She turned her back to me while she said it, as if I was some dangerous criminal. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, watching it all unfold. I stood there, watching her talk into the phone like she was reporting a serious crime. She kept glancing over her shoulder, like she expected me to lunge at her or something. I wasn't even close to her. I had both hands at my sides and hadn't said a word since she made the call. But Karen was in full performance mode. I'm at /address, she said loud and clear. There's a man here being aggressive. He's threatening me. I'm scared to leave. Aggressive? I hadn't even raised my voice. Threatening? I was literally standing still, not moving a muscle. Scared to leave? She was the one who walked up to my house, uninvited. It would have been funny if it wasn't so ridiculous. I thought about recording her. I reached for my phone but then paused. I didn't want to escalate anything. Even though I had nothing to hide, the last thing I needed was to make the situation worse. I figured the best thing to do was stay calm and let it play out. That's when I remembered something important. My wife was working. And not just working anywhere, she was on her 911 shift at the dispatch center. Now, we don't normally talk during her shifts unless it's urgent. But this situation? It was already out of control. I sent her a quick text. Karen's at the house. Just called 911. Claims I'm threatening her. No more than 10 seconds later, Karen suddenly went quiet on the phone. She stopped talking. Her expression changed. I could tell something just shifted. Her mouth opened slightly and she looked a bit confused. Maybe even uncomfortable. She turned her body away from me a little more, as if hiding her face would help. Then she said, yes, I understand. Pause. No, I didn't realize that. Another pause. Yes, okay. Thank you. She hung up. No more dramatic voice. No more calls for help. Just a strange silence, followed by her slowly slipping her phone back into her purse. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, waiting for her to explain herself, but she didn't. She stood there for a moment, then turned and started walking away like nothing had happened. I checked my phone. There was a text from my wife. She called. I picked up. "Don't worry, I handled it." Karen had no idea when she made that call that the voice on the other end was the last person she should have tried to lie to. My wife had dealt with real emergencies, real danger, and she could spot nonsense from a mile away. The irony? Karen thought she was in control. She thought she could twist the story and play the victim. But the second she heard my wife's voice, everything changed. Karen didn't say a word as she walked away. No parting comment. No dramatic insult. She just turned around stiffly and marched off like nothing had happened. But her silence said everything. For the first time, I think she realized she wasn't the one holding all the cards. I stood there for a minute, still processing everything. The whole scene had been surreal, like something out of a comedy sketch. One moment she's yelling about rules and threatening to inspect my water heater, the next she's on the phone trying to act like I'm some dangerous maniac, and then, nothing. Just silence and retreat. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my wife. She tried it. I shut it down. She's not calling back. I couldn't help but smile. Not because I wanted to embarrass Karen or win some petty argument, but because for once her behavior actually caught up to her. My wife didn't yell or accuse her. She didn't need to. All she had to do was calmly remind Karen of what the law actually says, and what it doesn't allow. From what my wife later told me, Karen was completely caught off guard when she recognized the voice on the call. At first she tried to stick to her story. Claimed she was in danger. That I was acting unstable. But my wife asked her a few simple questions. Is he threatening you right now? No, but he won't let me in. Has he made any physical moves toward you? Well, no. Has he broken a law or touched you in any way? No. And that was it. Karen had nothing to stand on. My wife told her she couldn't use emergency services to push personal disputes. She reminded her that HOA board members don't have authority to enter private property without permission. And she gently but firmly suggested that if Karen felt the need to escalate further, she could speak with law enforcement in person, but that misusing 911 could have consequences. Karen backed down. Fast. That phone call probably lasted less than 2 minutes, but it changed the entire tone of the day. And honestly, it probably changed Karen's perspective too. Because the next day, something even stranger happened. She avoided us. I saw her walking down the street, clipboard in hand as usual. But when she got close to our house, she looked the other way. She didn't stop. Didn't slow down. She passed by without even glancing at our yard. That had never happened before. It was weird. But it also said a lot. Because when someone like Karen suddenly stops trying to control everything, it means something cracked. Something shifted. And I couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking as she walked past, acting like we weren't even there. Over the next few days, the silence from Karen was almost too good to be true. She didn't send any letters. Didn't stop by. Didn't even do her usual patrol around the block with her clipboard and phone at the ready. It was like someone had unplugged her battery. And to be honest, the neighborhood felt lighter without her hovering around. I didn't say anything to the neighbors right away. I figured it was just a matter of time before she bounced back and started her usual nonsense again. But then I got a message from our next-door neighbor, Dave. It was short. Just, "Hey, heard about what happened with Karen. Meeting this Thursday might be interesting." That's when I found out the HOA board had called a special meeting. Apparently, I wasn't the only one Karen had bothered that week. She tried to let herself into someone else's backyard to check for unauthorized equipment, whatever that means. Another neighbor said she took pictures of their windows, claiming there were privacy violations. People were fed up. And after the 911 stunt at my house, word got around quickly. I didn't plan to speak at the meeting. I'm not the type to cause drama. But a few other neighbors brought it up. They wanted me to explain what really happened, since Karen was apparently telling people I had intimidated her and refused to follow HOA procedures. Classic Karen move, twist the facts and hope no one asks questions. The meeting was held at the community clubhouse. More people showed up than usual. You could feel the tension before it even started. Karen was there, of course, sitting near the front, acting like nothing had happened. Clipboard in her lap, lips pressed together like she was preparing for a courtroom defense. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't attack her. I just told the truth. How she came to my house, tried to force her way in, and called 911 because I wouldn't let her violate my privacy. I mentioned that my wife happened to be the dispatcher who took the call. I didn't even need to go into detail, just saying that was enough to get people murmuring. A few other neighbors stood up after me. They shared their own stories about intimidation, overreach, and unnecessary complaints. One guy even said he'd installed a camera because he caught Karen peeking over his fence. By the end of the meeting, the board didn't make any big decisions. No one got removed. But something changed in the room. People finally felt like they could speak up. And Karen? She didn't say a word. Not once. She just sat there with that clipboard on her lap, looking down at it like she was trying to disappear. It wasn't about embarrassing her. It wasn't even about revenge. It was just about setting a boundary. Reminding everyone that no one, not even Karen with her rule book, gets to walk over people like that. A week after the HOA meeting, things around the neighborhood felt different. Quieter. More relaxed. Kids were playing basketball in driveways again. Someone put up wind chimes without worrying about getting a letter. Even the guy down the street started parking his RV out front like he used to. It was like everyone took a breath at the same time. Karen, though, she vanished. Not completely. I'd still see her walking her little dog early in the morning, but she didn't make eye contact. She didn't stop to scold anyone about their yard or take notes or pull out her phone. She just walked head down like she was suddenly just another neighbor. It was strange to see her without the usual attitude. People noticed too. Dave said, "It's like she finally realized she's not the HOA police." Another neighbor joked that maybe someone hacked her clipboard. Whatever the reason, her whole vibe had shifted. No more threats. No more surprise visits. Just silence. Then one afternoon, I saw her standing at the end of her driveway talking to someone from the board. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it didn't look like a friendly chat. She kept shaking her head and gesturing toward houses, like she was trying to make a point. But the board member just nodded calmly, then walked away. The next day, a letter went out to the entire neighborhood. It wasn't about anyone's grass or paint colors. It was a general reminder from the HOA about respecting privacy, proper channels for filing complaints, and the limits of board authority. It didn't mention Karen by name, but everyone knew who it was for. I wasn't mad. Honestly, I felt kind of sorry for her. Because the truth is, people like Karen don't wake up one day and decide to be the villain. Something inside them makes them crave control. Maybe they feel small somewhere else in life, so they make themselves feel big in the one place they can. Maybe they think being feared means being respected. But the problem is, fear doesn't last. Not forever. The funny part is, if Karen had just knocked on the door like a normal person, asked a few questions, maybe even brought a bit of kindness with her, I probably would have let her see whatever she was so curious about. There was never anything to hide. But she chose the power move. She chose control. And that choice backfired. Now, when I walk around the neighborhood, people wave more. They stop and talk. There's less tension in the air. It feels more like a community again. And even though Karen still lives here, it's like the spell she had over the block has been broken. She still avoids my house, though. Walks her dog a little faster when she gets near. And I just nod politely like always and let her keep walking. About 2 weeks after everything settled down, I came home from work and found an envelope tucked under my doormat. No stamp, no name, just folded neatly with a single word written on the front. Asterisk, neighbor. Asterisk. At first, I thought it was some kind of flyer or maybe another HOA notice. But when I opened it, the handwriting inside made my eyebrows raise. It was from Karen. The note wasn't long. A few short lines written carefully in neat, slanted script. I may have overstepped. I was only trying to look out for the neighborhood. But I understand things got out of hand. I'll keep my distance from now on. No apology exactly, but it was the closest thing to humility I'd ever seen from her. Karen admitting, sort of, that she might have gone too far? That was new. And honestly, I didn't know what to make of it. I showed the note to my wife. She raised an eyebrow, then smiled just slightly. "That's her version of saying sorry," she said. "You know, it probably took a lot for her to write that." She was right. For someone like Karen, letting go of control isn't easy. It's probably not something she ever learned how to do. So even that short note, just a few sentences, meant she was trying in her own way. And I respected that more than I expected to. I didn't respond. I didn't go knock on her door or bring it up. I figured if she really meant it, I'd see it in her actions, not her words. And slowly that started to happen. One afternoon, I saw her walking by again, same little dog trotting along beside her. But this time she didn't avoid my house. She actually looked up, met my eyes, and gave the smallest nod. Not a smile. Not a wave. Just a nod. But again, It meant something. Other neighbors noticed a difference too. She wasn't sticking notes on people's doors anymore. She wasn't reporting every tiny violation. She still kept to herself, but the edge was gone. The constant tension had faded. It was strange, honestly. After everything that happened, part of me kept waiting for her to snap back into old habits. For the clipboard to reappear. For another surprise visit. But it didn't come. I guess something about that day, the 911 call, my wife answering, the fallout afterward, hit a nerve. Maybe it made her realize that there's a limit to how far you can push people before they push back. There's still a long way to go before she's seen as just another friendly neighbor. That trust doesn't come back overnight. But every time she walks by without a scowl, every time she lets something go that she would have pounced on before, it's progress. Not everything changes all at once. Sometimes, the biggest shifts start with something as small as a quiet walk past your house, and a handwritten note under the mat. A couple of weeks after Karen stepped down, I noticed something new on the community bulletin board near the mailboxes. It was a handwritten flyer, taped up with a little blue painter's tape at the corners. Big letters at the top said, *block potluck, everyone's welcome. There wasn't a name signed at the bottom, just a smiley face and a time and date. I smiled a little when I saw it. Nobody had organized anything like that in a long time. Not since before Karen really took over the HOA reins. Back then, people used to gather for block parties and cookouts and little meet and greets in the park across the street. But over time those things disappeared. People got too careful. Too quiet. The clipboard era made everyone nervous. Now all of a sudden we had a potluck happening. On the day of the event, folding tables started popping up along the sidewalk. People brought out lawn chairs, crock-pots, drinks and big coolers. Someone dragged out a speaker and played music from their driveway. It wasn't huge, but it was warm and lively. For the first time in a long time, the street felt like home. And then, something even more unexpected happened. Karen showed up. No clipboard. No measuring tape. No suspicious glances. Just her and her little dog and, believe it or not, a covered dish in her hands. She kept to the edge of the gathering at first, standing quietly by the drink table like she wasn't sure if she was really allowed to be there. But slowly a few people walked over and said hello. She didn't make a big scene. She wasn't trying to run anything. She just stood there, nodded, smiled a bit when people spoke to her. Someone asked what she brought and she said it was a baked pasta dish, homemade. A neighbor actually laughed and said, "That's the most surprising thing I've heard all day." People started to relax around her. Not completely, but a little. It was strange in a good way. The same woman who once tried to fine someone for using the wrong mulch was now making small talk about recipes and neighborhood dogs. I saw her chatting with the couple 2 houses down who once caught her photographing their recycling bins. There was no tension. Just 2 people eating paper plate nachos and laughing about something I couldn't hear. The whole night felt like a turning point. Not just because of Karen but because of everyone. We were starting to remember what it meant to actually be neighbors. To share space without suspicion. To connect without worrying about lawn code violations or the exact shade of your fence stain. As the sun went down and string lights flickered on over the tables, I looked around and realized something simple, but important. When people feel safe they show up. And when the noise dies down, you finally get to hear each other again. A few evenings after the potluck, I was sitting on the porch, sipping a cup of tea and enjoying the quiet. The sky was starting to turn that soft orange-purple color, and the air had that peaceful hum that only happens when the whole block finally winds down for the night. I heard footsteps again. This time, slow and steady. It was Karen. She didn't have her dog with her, just a reusable grocery bag in one hand and a look on her face like she wasn't totally sure what she was doing. I gave her a polite nod, expecting her to keep walking like she usually did now. But she stopped at the edge of my walkway. "I made too many muffins," she said, holding up the bag slightly. "Figured I'd share them with someone who might actually eat them." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't forced. Just one of those casual neighborly things you say when you're trying. I got up, walked over and took the bag from her hands. "Appreciate that," I said. "What kind?" "Pumpkin. From scratch," she added like she was oddly proud of that part. We stood there for a moment, not really saying anything. The porch light flickered on and a few moths danced around it. I could tell she wasn't in a rush to leave, so I asked if she wanted to sit down for a minute. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure." So we sat. 2 people who had been at opposite ends of every neighborhood disagreement, just sitting on a porch like normal folks. At first we talked about nothing important. The weather. The flowers blooming down the street. A new family that had just moved in near the corner. But then she said something that caught me off guard. I didn't know how to stop. For a while, I really thought I was doing the right thing. Keeping order. Keeping people in line. I didn't realize how much I was actually pushing people away. She didn't look at me when she said it. Just stared out at the street, watching a car slowly drive by. I didn't interrupt. Didn't offer advice. Just let her say what she needed to say. I guess I thought if I didn't keep control, everything would fall apart. But it turns out things run just fine when people feel respected. It was the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard from her. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't make excuses. Just spoke like someone who had finally stopped trying to win and started trying to understand. Before she left, she stood up and said, "I know I can't undo the past, but I'm trying to be different moving forward." I nodded. That's all anyone can do. She gave a small, quiet smile and walked down the driveway without another word. No clipboard. No lecture. Just Karen with a half-empty muffin bag trying to figure out how to be a neighbor for real this time.